Hello, welcome everyone to Herding Squirrels, a podcast about modern teams. Joining us today is Oliver Gray. Oliver is a director of engineering at Trustpilot and has spent the last 7 years working for high-growth SaaS companies following his earlier career in consulting and finance. At Trustpilot, he leads an engineering department responsible for launching new software products targeted at consulting firms, investment firms, and AI agents. He's passionate about building and scaling up high-performing, product-focused engineering teams, and in his spare time enjoys cooking, playing squash, and the occasional EDM event. Welcome, Oliver!
Thanks, Brandon. Nice to be here.
All right, we're excited to have you. We're going to jump right into building. To start off, I want you to build a model that tells a story about who you are outside of work.
Let's talk you through this. So, he's holding two things. This is me. This you'll have to pretend is a squash racket. I know it has a flag on the end of it, but it's a squash racket. And this is kind of a frying pan with, like, I don't know, an egg and some green things in it. But I do enjoy to cook, so cooking in one hand, squash in the other hand. If I'd thought about it, I could have put some running shoes there because I do quite enjoy going for runs. And then I did try to capture the EDM gigs occasionally. So this is like a flashing light scenario we have going on the side. Dancing.
I love it. It's so amazing. I love that you've captured EDM in a wheel with lights. It's so great. Do you have a specialty that you cook, or do you have a dish that you've been excited about lately?
So my special skill is actually like doing stuff with leftovers. So you give me a fridge full of stuff and I will make something new and exciting. So yeah, I don't technically have a speciality, but coming up with random things is kind of it.
Awesome. I love you're good at combining pieces that are around. I love it. And we're just going to jump into our next build. For your next build, I'd like you to think about what is the best team experience you've ever been a part of, and why was that experience so good in your opinion?
Okay.
Awesome. Oliver, let's see your model.
Sure. Ooh, here we go.
Nice.
It's kind of sideways. You see the sort of upwards trajectory here, and the same on this side. So best team experience I had, I think, was taking a team on a journey from basically some underperformance to high performing. And basically the team had inherited a bunch of code that they didn't write. It was kind of full of errors and alerts and things. So we've got the red and white shiny things going off here at the start. So they're pretty demotivated. They didn't write the code. It's not doing very well. So working with them to acknowledge that that's a bad space to be in, but we'll get through it, we'll get past it. And then as we sort of come up this side, we got through that phase, and then I talked to them about, like, I was helping the team have a stronger mission, essentially. Like, they were kind of the miscellaneous team for a while, so they didn't feel, I think, very vested in what they were doing. So this is kind of the mission on this side, getting clearer and clearer as we get up to whatever this trophy green thing is here. So we clarified the mission, the team started to pull together, we introduced some more accountability, some more ownership, so individuals could lead epics and features by themselves, and help them sort of individually grow. And then towards the end of it, I spoke to them about, I'd helped them sort of set the mission, but now I wanted the team to take over and be their own bosses, basically. Like, the team could be more nimble if they were driving what they were doing as a team themselves. And yeah, like now, at the end of it, they're like a high performing team. They get on and get stuff done. They have lots of product thinking, and they're still continuing the journey, I guess, as they're facing that way as they carry on through their career.
Nice. I like that. I noticed there's an eyeball on there. Does that have any specific meaning?
It was just the kind of like the sort of watching alerts, the chaos that like,
tied into the lights. I love it. That's fantastic. You mentioned helping the team set the mission. How did you go about doing that? Like, what was the process in that? Because it's such an important thing, like having purpose at work and feeling a part of something. But it seems to be missing with a lot of teams out there.
Yeah, it's it's something I work in partnership with product and design. So obviously the product side have to be fully aligned with what you're working towards as a mission. So I worked very closely with the product manager I worked with at the time to sort of say, like, I think the mission beforehand was a bit vague, and it turned out that, like, also perhaps not that important. Like, the priorities of the company had shifted. So basically talking to that product manager going, well, like, what is the mission then? Like, what do we want to be doing? To some extent, there's like a top down and a bottom up. For a long time, I think a lot of that team had been top down. They'd just been told what to do. And I think if we, by developing the bottom up and saying, no, like, this is what we think we should be doing, this is how we want to move that metric, this is what we think we're good at, what we're skilled at, that was how we managed to change the direction. Yeah.
Awesome. I love that exchange, right? It's a handshake of both. I'm going to jump into our next build, which I want you to build the opposite, Oliver. What's the most nightmare team experience, right? And I think we all have at least one of these in our back pocket, unfortunately. But what is that nightmare team scenario or leadership scenario? And why was it so bad? Why do you think it was that way? And what did you learn from it?
All right, this is my nightmare team novel, which is more of a journey, if I'm honest. But yeah, let's hold it back a little bit. So, the eyeballs are missing. Here we go. So, the worst sort of team experience I had was joining a new job and discovering that external consultancy had been employed to deliver a new piece of software, and the requirements had already been written by a business analyst who had just taken an existing system and captured it all and given it to the consultancy to figure out how to build. And it was a fixed price project. Now, when I joined, I was like, there's lots of problems with the existing software, but we're trying to build the same thing. That seems worrying. Like, how can we sort of reset this from the start? But really the worst problem was that as an external consultancy, they were not allowed access to our code base. They were not allowed access to our environments. So they were going to write this whole piece of software and then hand it over to us to then implement inside the big company I was working at. Which, if I'd been there at the time, I would have advised highly against, because it's full of like problems and things. And so what happens was, they build this system, and when they hand it over to us, it takes way longer to integrate it onto the systems on our side than we were expecting. And in fact, there was even like a fundamental flaw with the logic in it that the consultancy worked for a big software agency whose name will remain anonymous, but we assumed that since they were experts in the product, they wrote the product themselves, they would know that, if it would work or not. But there was actually this big problem with it. So multiple times at the end of the project, we had to keep resetting expectations with the business, saying, yeah, this software isn't ready yet because we've got this problem and this challenge or whatever. So like, I forgot to go back to my Lego, but these are the consultants who, there's nothing wrong with them. They weren't bad, but like, they were given this little requirements document here that wasn't probably very good. There's this big wall because they don't have access to work with our code base. And then there's like the sort of increasing scope on our side as time goes on, and the engineers going like, so that's basically, the story there.
I love great model. Knowing what you know now, looking back, why do you think that happened in that way?
So I think the incentive for doing it that way was that like it was a large enterprise company, quite challenging, I think, to get agreement for new full-time employees, but much more easily to get a budget for something. And rather than put forward a time and effort budget, a fixed price budget is much more easy to get sign off. So I guess it comes from sort of the restrictions of the company, but at the end of the day, the outcomes were not good. I think we had to pay them more at the end because the scope got bigger, etc. So, I mean, my learnings that I took away were, if you're ever going to do a fixed price project, then it has to be a fairly simple project with very well-known requirements, which in software is quite unusual, I would say. Most of the time, there's nearly always like more you need to know from the user about designing it, etc., etc. I think if I were to do over it again, I would do time and money, but to make sure that the company that's paying the money are happy, we'd set milestones along the way and said, well, we expect to be here in 2 months' time, we expect to be here in 3 months' time, and then we can all make sure that we're staying accountable to each other, basically.
Awesome. Let's do one more build, and then we'll just kind of jam a little bit. But I think for this build, Oliver, we've all been through a lot lately. We got COVID, we've got the shift to remote and hybrid work, we've got AI adoption. It's just constant shifts, it feels like right now. I'd like you to build a model that shows what leading through uncertainty actually looks like. Like, what is the real experience of navigating your team through changes when the playbook hasn't been written yet?
Good question. Okay, here we go. It's kind of compact, but So this is the uncertainty with the lumpy blocks here. Um, we'll start at the top here, I guess. So you're the leader. I think the reason we spin here is because we've got to kind of lead by looking forwards and future, but also we've got to look back and help the team and empathize with them and take them through this. I think the change curve is really useful to sort of explain when you have like a pivot or something. The sort of there's like the grief, the denial, the anger, the acceptance. Like it's a really useful one to talk people through, so they can sort of recognize their feelings and makes it more easier to digest. There's transparency here, very big on transparency and just telling people how it is. And then I think there's a little flag here of sort of celebration, like along the way, like make sure you celebrate your wins, right? So that you're keeping everyone. Well, yeah, it's important to celebrate the wins. Otherwise, like it might take a long time to get to the end, but there's lot of little wins along the way, essentially. I guess, yeah. And then looking back was sort of empathizing with your team. Like I discovered that one of my engineers in the past joked that I was like their work counselor. And it kind of struck with me because the conversations I had with him were often like, he would share his frustrations and I would empathize, sometimes provide ways out or alternatives, at other times just say, yeah, that sucks. And it was just an interesting perspective. Also, I think if you're going from like an IC to an engineering manager, that's like one of the key changes, that you are now concerned about the team and how they're feeling rather than just yourself, mostly as an IC, I guess.
Those are all wonderful pieces. In thinking about change, like what are you seeing as the most impactful changes currently, and what excites you, what scares you? Yeah, what's running through your mind right now?
I mean, I think it has to be AI, right? That's on everyone's mind right now. Like there's a lot of, well, we don't know if it's hype, but some of it looks like hype. Some of it is no doubt going to be useful and it's going to accelerate us. I think what we might see is kind of the beginnings of a bit of a reaction that in time will smooth out, but it's a very tight feedback cycle. Like things are moving so fast, it's very hard to say what's going to happen in the software industry, I think, in the near term. But I mean, AI is phenomenally powerful. Like I've vibe coded with it to sort of create a retro game, and it can do 60% of the code in no time at all. Still sort of experimenting to see how well it does with the rest of it. But I'm reading now that if you treat it as a junior developer and you give it enough guardrails like BDD tests, etc., so that it has enough context to build the right solution, then it can be quite good for that. It's definitely great for prototyping, for design, and demos and things like that. So yeah, I mean, what I told my engineers was that we all need to be using it, experimenting with it, seeing what it's good for, potentially what it's not good for the moment at least. But from their perspective, if they're product focused, which is a big thing for me, then that will definitely sort of insure them for longer, because it will take longer for AI to be both product focused and writing code. Let's be honest.
How do you feel like engineers in general are because I'm sure there's a very wide variety of opinions that are out there. Is it fear? Is it excitement? Is it both? Like what are you seeing?
Yes, definitely both, as you say. Some fear, some excitement. Depends on the individual. I think some people probably feeling both at the same time, emotions. I think what's kind of interesting as a conversation I've been having recently is how AI will affect the company as a whole versus how AI is going to affect software engineering, because they are related but different, right? So the strategy that you give to your company is going to be more around sort of documentation and generating ideas, I guess, and things like that. Whereas the software engineering use cases will include those, but will also have some very specific, like how do I write more code, better tests, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, it kind of depends on where you sit within a company, I guess, as to how it's going to start impacting you sooner or later, really.
I know you mentioned earlier with working along with you've got engineering, and then you also work with product, you work with design. Are you working with these teams all looking at AI at the same time, or is everyone sort of looking at their avenue and saying, hey, here's how I become more efficient or play with it in my playground, if you will?
Yeah, I think in my experience, we're all sort of looking at it independently, but I think that's why we're seeing a lot more interest in the job market for like AI advisors, if you like, or strategists who can come in and tell companies how to implement it, essentially. Certainly when one of our designers got very interested in AI and sort of created this demo, One, it let them create the demo extremely fast, but also we could even borrow some of that code on the engineering side, which was quite novel, right? Not something we've had before, where the designers basically sharing almost snippets of code for charts that we're putting together.
Thinking about your change model, right? There's so many great things in there, looking forward and looking back, right? There's a point of balance with this. How do you influence, right, that team dynamic in a way that's productive and helpful for everyone?
That's a good question. As you say, there's obviously the one-on-ones, the individual relationships that you're having with each manager or engineer. I think all you can really do is set the environment for a healthy team where you've got high psychological safety. Everyone feels comfortable, like sharing their concerns as well as their ideas. In the sort of hybrid or remote first kind of world that I speak of now, I think it's important to set aside time for bonding, basically, whether that's virtual bonding, like having a social call every couple of weeks, or if you are, in physical offices at some point, even better, that people can get together and sort of relax and throw out ideas. It's very hard to recreate. I mean, we call them sort of, water cooler moments, but I find out, when I'm in the office, that I will see someone from a different department and we'll have a quick chat. And it's amazing what just sort of comes up randomly, and trying to recreate that remotely can be quite challenging. But my last company, Hopin, had this Slack bot that obviously sets up coffee chats for people, and it was set across the whole company, which was actually really cool because you would meet people you've never met before, and as I say, just like the water cooler, be surprised when you're like, oh, that's actually quite interesting. You should talk to so and so, or maybe I can help you with that. I really like those kind of things that happen if you can try and generate that contact.
Some of these wonderful nuggets that you brought up, I think, right, top down versus bottom up, when thinking about, right, mission and purpose, and some of this time, this balance, like these reflections, this leaning forward and looking backwards, right, this sort of a juxtaposition. How do you find time for these things? There is only so much time in the day, and you probably have deliverables when you have the one-on-ones with your team. How do you find that balance of time?
Yeah, I think a lot of people benefit from sort of putting aside, whether it's like 15 minutes a day for reflection at the end of the day, or like half an hour at the end of the week. I have to be honest, I do it ad hoc. Like I keep notes all of the time. I have a constantly evolving to-do list where the priorities potentially shift. The things at the bottom will sometimes fall off because they just never reached, important enough kind of status. And then I'll sit down with a big, I don't know what it is in America, but A1 sheet of paper and a permanent marker, probably like once a quarter or something, and just start mapping out like what's the most important, what's happening over here, what haven't been able to get to. I really like, that kind of ideation where you've just got space to sketch and draw and take that step back to have a look at it, essentially. Also, especially if you're, an engineering manager or above that level, is making your team become self-sufficient without you, right? So that you only have to spend a minimum amount of time with them, like helping them unblock things, or when a project's really important at the start of it, or planning. But like, the more self-sufficient they are, the more power you've given them, the better for you to look externally or from the balcony view and figure out what's going on elsewhere. So I think that's a key part of it as well.
You mentioned that earlier as well. You mentioned, I want to say is letting people or having people become their own bosses.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How do people feel about that? Is everyone excited to go down that approach? Is there some resistance from some folks?
I should probably ask some of the teams I've done it with, but I think potentially they're skeptical at the start. I mean, who wouldn't be, right? They're like, well, you're the manager. Why aren't you doing the management side of things? But from the results I've seen, everyone enjoys it after some time because they realize that they are so much more in control of what they're doing and how they're doing, that even if, there's, I guess, some work they're doing themselves, like talking to a stakeholder or design or whatever, then they're the ones who get to have that conversation, and they're growing in their career, right? That's going to help them going forward. So I've only seen positive results for it in the medium to long term anyway.
Oh, it's fantastic. Right. It's increasing agency, right? Your level of control, your level of influence over what you're working on, which should be that way. Oliver, we've been jamming for a while. I think we have time for one more quick build.
Okay.
So I'd love to let's break the Legos back out.
Okay.
And I always end on this build, but I want you to imagine you've got a room full of ICs that are stepping into their first leadership role. And I'd like you to build a model that shares what's Oliver's model of advice for this group of up-and-coming leaders.
So this one's maybe a little abstract, but This is the model. So essentially, yeah, we're talking about advice for sort of ICs becoming managers. So we touched upon this, but this is sort of the list of things you have to do. And my advice is to like consistently maintain this and keep reprioritizing it, especially if you're working in a fast moving company, because things will keep shifting and you'll want to make sure that you're concentrating on the highest priority. Also means you don't forget things, which is handy. This is like eyeballs in all directions. So you're looking upwards, right? You're, as an IC, you've got your manager, but they probably know pretty much what you're working on. But as a manager now, you have to share upwards what's happening with the team, what you're delivering. So you've got kind of a new perspective, I think, to look up. But you've got to keep looking, probably more so looking sideways to like other peers and other teams for their help, etc. And also down to your engineers to help them with their roles, continue what they're doing, etc. And then I've got this kind of gift in the hand here, which is talking about building those relationships across the company, right? With like sales, marketing, like all of your stakeholders essentially, that will keep you sort of grounded again in prioritizing, but also in maybe finding new opportunities for the team, and just making sure that you're able to lead your team effectively because you have all of the sort of facts and people's needs at your fingertips.
I love it. Oliver, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing it. I have to ask, like, what was it like building your thoughts and ideas out of Lego bricks?
Yeah, it's fun. I probably enjoyed Lego as a kid, but I haven't done it much recently. So I did art at A level, so I feel like I have a creative side. So it's kind of fun to put that to good use here.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, if our listeners want to find more about you, Oliver, is there a place we can find more information or we can find you on the internet?
Yeah, LinkedIn is probably the right place to look for me at the moment. I do try and publish some thoughts and ideas there occasionally. And I'm looking for a new role if any listeners out there do have a good lead for me. So do let me know.
Awesome. Awesome. And know that he's very good with Legos. So we put that on the top bullet point. Fantastic. Well, Oliver, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your stories. We can't wait to share it with all of our audience.
Thanks, Brandon. Appreciate it.
All right. And thanks, everyone, for listening. This has been Herding Squirrels, where we uncover the nuts and bolts of teams.